Hello everyone, new game here. Let's talk about, if we can, if we get lucky, spell mana and the spell stack. So I'm against another AI opponent. We're going to take our time. We are going to turn off auto pass if we can help it. And what do we have here? Well, we've got a burst spell, and 2 units. Thing is, I like all of these. It's just going to be slightly awkward. I think we're going to try keeping all of them, which is pretty greedy because nothing that I have is inherently that valuable. But we're going to try. As with AI games, I am first. Nothing that's playable because Brittle Steel must target an enemy unit specifically, so nothing in my hand is playable. We end the first. We pass on the first round. My opponent plays a card. I now have a playable spell, but I don't want to frostbite that, so we're going to pass again. My opponent passes, round ends, cool. We're not going to spend too much time talking about rounds anymore because you know how that works. On to round 2, I get hit, I don't block, whatever. Play Warding Stones, cool. Warding Stones is a unit that at the start of round grants me an extra mana gem for that round, which means when round 3 starts, I'll have 4 mana to spend, which is pretty sweet. Okay. 4 mana to spend, meaning I can play Ash right now. Isn't that beautiful?
My arrow? I think not.
My opponent plays Senna, and now we can start talking about slightly more intricate interactions. So Ash has an attack effect. When I attack, Frostbite, which is set power to 0, the strongest, which is the highest power unit, then broken by health, then cost. So when I attack, Frostbite, the strongest enemy. Well, that's going to be Senna. And attack effects happen so fast, they, in most cases, instantly resolve before you can react to them. So as soon as I click attack, Senna is going to be frostbitten and nothing can be done about that. So, I attack, she's frostbitten, and my opponent chooses to block me with the Aristocrat. Fair enough. We'll let combat happen. I kill the Aristocrat, I take 1 damage, off we go. Cool, no big deal. My opponent has a spell. And here's the thing. So let's start talking about spells and spell speeds. Crawling Sensation is a spell, and it is a slow spell. Slow spells, in almost every case, work identical to units in terms of you can only play them when it's your action, and you can only play them when it's your action outside of combat. When a unit is played, the unit's played, and that's pretty much it in most cases. When a spell is played, it starts what's called, I think in this game, the stack. Spells can be reacted to in real time by spells that are fast or burst. So there's 3 speeds. There's slow, fast, and burst. Slow can only be played outside of combat. Fast can be played outside or inside of combat, and in either case they start a stack. And then burst can be played much like fast, outside or inside of combat, or in response to a stack. But burst spells instantly resolve. So if I had a reason to care about Crawling Sensation, I could use Brittle Steel and instantly frostbite something, because Brittle Steel is a burst spell. Now in this case, I don't care, so I'm not going to do anything about it, but because my opponent played a spell, we're now in... It's almost like combat, where if my opponent attacks, I declare blockers and we go back and forth. When someone casts a spell that's either slow or fast, but not burst, it starts a stack where we go back and forth. Similar rules, similar ideas. And much like combat, no matter how much we do, once it resolves, it switches to the other player's turn. That was really complex. We'll see more of it later, don't worry. So, short of it, my opponent played a spell, and because they played a spell, I have the option to react to it by playing fast or burst spells myself. I choose not to. We let it resolve. But my opponent did something on their action. It's now my action. I choose to do nothing. I pass my turn. My opponent plays another card. Another Crawling Sensation. Once again, I still don't care. We let it resolve. We say okay. Off we go. Once again, actually my action now, right? So I was asked to let the chain resolve, right? The chain of the spell, which is really only one link in that chain. The chain resolved, but the action was still cast the spell, so it's my action again on the round, right? There's actions, which are big, heavy things that you do and go back and forth, and there's little subsections, which is things like combat or a chain of spells. Alright, I pass, my opponent passes, round 3 is over, round 4 begins. What does my opponent want to do in round 4? Well, they can't play minions, because you can only have 6 units on your bench. So any of these spells that are units are completely unplayable. Spells could be played, but not units. My opponent declares an attack, and here's where it gets exciting. So we are in the middle of combat, and not only can I declare blockers, which I will do, but I can also play fast or burst spells. Now, I cannot play Shatter. It's a slow spell. I cannot play Warding Stone as a unit, and I cannot play Thermogenic Beam. It's a slow spell. Does not work in combat. The only viable cards are Burst, Burst, Fast. And what I want to do is a chain of spells. Now, we're going to get even more complex, and I'm not sure it's the time to do it. So I'm not going to dive too heavily into all the priority passing around chains. The short of it is, get everything done as soon as possible, right? Combat is happening, so I need to manipulate combat, which means I drag Ash up to Senna. I cast Brittle Steel to Frostbite Senna. Because it's burst, it instantly resolves. Senna's now 0-2. And I could be done, but I'm not done. I want to use Static Shock to kill 2 of these spiders. I'm still not done. I also want to use Warding Stones to block one of the other spiders. So it was my turn to do things during combat, and what I did was declare a blocker, cast a burst spell, cast a fast spell. All of that during my little pocket of action. My little pocket of action during combat. And I say, okay, I'm done. My opponent now gets to react to me. They choose to not react to me. We trade blows, we block some damage, and that went pretty well. My opponent declared combat. I did whatever I wanted to during that little pocket of combat. It's now my action. And now that we're not in combat, I can finally cast a slow spell like Thermogenic Beam. I don't want to. I'm going to pass. Now my opponent can play units, or can cast spells, and indeed they cast Mist's Call. That is a fast spell, right? So fast spells, much like slow spells, start a chain. And if I wanted to react by casting Entreat, this is a unit, this is slow, this is slow, this is a unit. The only viable spell would be Entreat, but I can't pay for it. It's too much mana. So the only option I have is saying okay. But any non-burst spell starts a chain. I say, let's let the chain resolve, and a unit gets revived. Thankfully for me, I got lucky. It was only a spiderling. My opponent took an action. My action again. I pass. On we go. Alright, on to round 5. And I have so many options here, right? I have 6 mana on round 5 because of Wording Stones. Well, I do want to play Ezreal.
The world's a big place.
What does my opponent want to do?
Let's see all of it.
They play Radiant Guardian. That's a pretty good card. But let's think about how Ash works again. I Frostbite the strongest enemy, meaning attacking is really powerful here. But am I done yet? Because I want to plan my turn out. I want to plan the round out. When Ezreal strikes the Nexus, he creates a free spell, a Mystic Shot. But it's fleeting. It only lasts during this round. It's automatically discarded, which means I have to use it this round, or it does nothing. Well, Mystic Shot is a 2-mana fast spell that deals 2 damage. So I need to save 2 mana. I want to save 2 mana. That's fine. I can save 2 mana. Let's go ahead and play Warding Stones. And you go, wait, freak! You only had 3 mana! Time to explain spell mana. Spell mana is a unique mechanic in this game where up to 3 unspent mana is banked at the end of the round and can only be used to cast spells. I have banked 1 spell mana that I haven't spent so far this game, meaning I can't play any more 2 mana units. I couldn't play another Wording Stones, but I can, as I poke my eye, play a 2 mana spell. Now I happen to have a real Mystic Shot. Don't worry, we're going to use Ezreal's Mystic Shot. And as one final point, Ezreal's also elusive. Elusive units can only be blocked by other elusive units, which means Ashe can attack, and she will freeze Radiant Guardian. Ezreal will attack, and my opponent has no viable blockers. Let's do it. You're frozen. Ashe takes 1 damage. That's okay. I'll pick off the Spiderling. Now again, keep in mind, let's talk about the chain of events again. When I declared my attack, and I said, okay, I'm done, if my opponent said okay, the chain ends and combat resolves instantly. But because we're in the pocket of combat, and my opponent took an action, they dragged that Spiderling into block, we are now reacting to each other within the pocket of combat, which means it's once again asking me what I want to do. Do you want to play a burst spell? Do you want to play a fast spell? I can now react to this declared blocker within the pocket of combat by playing fast or burst spells. Like if this was a really scary unit that I needed to shoot down before it killed me, I could do that. But this is fine. I'm happy with this. So we say, okay, to double check, how's combat going to go? Well, we look at the Oracle, and Ashe takes 1 damage, and you can see in the bottom right corner that little pre-generated Mystic Shot. So we're okay with that. Just as we expect, and it's my opponent's turn. My opponent casts the 3rd copy of Crawling Sensation. And now, it doesn't matter in terms of who's going to win, but now I can finally demonstrate to you the spell stack, or the chain, as we're going to call it. We are in a little pocket of the game that's a spell chain, right? We have a pocket of the game that's combat. We have a pocket of the game that's a spell chain. My opponent played a slow spell. If it was a fast spell, that would also be viable. But a chain of spells has now been sprung. I don't know if you spring chains. Who cares? I can react to this by playing Mystic Shot and doing whatever I want with it. Now, I want to point out something very important. Spells resolve in the reverse order that they're played. Last in, first out, or LIFO, is a common mnemonic for this in other card games that work this way. The last spell you play in a chain is the first spell to resolve. So, for example, if this was, instead of summon 2 Spiderlings, clone a Spiderling, I could shoot down the Spiderling and it would die before the clone effect. Now, this is just simply summon 2 units, right? So it's whatever. I can do anything I want with this. And I'm going to choose to go deal 2 damage to Radiant Guardian. To me, that's the right use of this spell. Actually, yeah, I think it's the right use of this spell. Now, I didn't have to do this. I could have let the spell resolve, let it come to my action, and then do it then. But to show it off, here we go. And if we look at how it resolves, the spell goes off, deals 2 damage, 2 Spiderlings are summoned, life goes on. But sometimes it does matter, because think about what we talked about earlier with how actions trade back and forth. Let's say my opponent didn't have 0 mana. Let's say my opponent had other things that they could play. Well, because I hid Mystic Shot inside of a spell chain, when this spell chain ends, it's still my turn. If I let it resolve, it would be my turn, and I could play Mystic Shot. But once I played Mystic Shot, it would be my opponent's turn to play. But because I snuck the Mystic Shot into a spell chain, the spell chain is self-contained. It's a little pocket. It's a pocket of actions. And so it goes off. The spell chain happens. And now it's back to me. It's my action. Now I don't have anything to do. We're going to pass here. But off we go. And little visual bug there on the Radiant Guardian, but that's okay. Round 6 begins. And this is a little scary, right? This is a little scary, right? I've got a lot of damage coming at me. It's 10 damage. That hurts a little bit. Now I can block some of it. You know, we can do some of this. I could sacrifice Ash. But here, I have several options, okay? Let's think about this. I can't play the slow spells. I can't play Shadow. I can't play Thermogenic Beam. I can do what I want with my blockers. I have fast spells. I could choose to double Mystic Shot this Radiant Guardian, right? I could Mystic Shot, and what would happen? We look at combat. She would die. I would block. I'd stay alive. I could choose to do that. But keep in mind, I have to commit to fast spells. Burst spells resolve instantly. Instantly, meaning I can just play Entreat and draw a champion. And I draw Ezreal. Now, one thing worth noting is you cannot play 2 copies of a champion in play at the same time. So if you have a champion in play and you draw a champion, it becomes that champion's linked spell, which is Mystic Shot. Every copy of Ezreal, if it's a duplicate, if you have one in play and one in hand, the one in hand becomes Mystic Shot. If Ezreal dies, it goes back to being Ezreal, but until then, it becomes Mystic Shot. And it becomes Ezreal's Mystic Shot. It shuffles itself back into your deck, so you're not so heavily punished for using it as Mystic Shot. You might redraw this card. Well, if I cared about that, I could do it. And if I needed to find Mystic Shot, using Entreat was really valuable there. But I already had 2 copies, so we're going to do that after all. We're going to actually go ahead and you know, nuke her with Mystic Shots, and it's going to be just fine. And once again, we preview the combat, and we're okay.
Charged.
So, Mystic Shot goes off, Mystic Shot goes off, then combat. I want to point out, the spells go off first. In a pocket of combat, the spells always go off first. Worth noting. Now, combat ended. No matter what happened, even though I was the last person to act during combat, that doesn't matter. Combat is self-contained. My opponent initiated it, so it's my action. What do I want to do with my action? I have 2 mana. I could play Shatter. I could play Thermogenic Beam. I could even play Ezreal's Mystic Shot. But here's a pro tip. If the cards in your hand are spells, generally speaking, wait. Because I'm going to bank this 2 mana as spell mana. And in general, I can use it whenever I want. So, I'm good like this. My opponent's action, they play Ravenous Butcher. And now do I do it? Nah, we're good. We'll wait. What do they play this time? Mist's Call. They're going to revive a random ally. Now, keep in mind, the only things that we have killed so far, the only things that we have killed this round are 2 Spiderlings and the Radiant Guardian. So the odds are 1 in 3 that this spell right here revives a 5 mana minion in Radiant Guardian. That's scary. I want to lower those odds. So turns out that I do want to play Mystic Shot, and I do want to kill a Spiderling. Because now, it's 1 in 4. There's now 3 dead Spiderlings by the time that spell resolves. And now we think about how the spell chain matters. Now I do care about how I respond to spells. And because Mystic Shot is fast, I can get it in before. So my odds are higher, but I might still get unlucky.
Firing.
Unlucky. 1 in 4, it happened. It happened. pass my turn. Opponent passes their turn. Off we go. Alright. So now we're going to do something a little trickier. We're going to talk about leveling up yet again. So there's a couple things going on right now, okay? So one is Ash is 2 XP away from leveling. When I frostbite an enemy, Ash levels up. So far, we're at 3 of the 5 needed to level up. And whenever a champion levels up, they almost always gain 1 power and 1 health. The damage will stick. Ash has taken 2 damage so far, so this will really be a 6-2. But Ash will gain 1 damage and 1 health if I can frostbite 2 more enemies. She'll frostbite 1 when she attacks, but I want to frostbite 1 more. There's also something else. Ezreal levels up when I target 8 enemy units, and we're at 7. So if I can do 1 more, I can level up Ezreal. And when Ezreal levels up, the free Mystic Shot that's in hand becomes a 0-cost Mystic Shot. So I really, really want to level up Ezreal before I attack. And I'd really like to level up Ash by the time that we attack. And I can do that with exactly 1 spell. I can simply play Shatter. And by playing Shatter, and we're going to go here, and we'll explain why later. By frostbiting you, I'm not only targeting an enemy for Ezreal, but frostbiting an enemy for Ash. Okay. My opponent let it happen.
I'm so good,
That's
I
just fine.
surprised myself.
Ezreal's level 2. Ash is 1 XP away. And let's think about what happens when Ash attacks, right? When Ash attacks, she will frostbite the strongest enemy and thus level up. And if we look at the preview, we can see that indeed Ash will be a 6-2. In the preview, Ash will have leveled up. Now, what's more is, again, because it happens at the very, very start, this can't be reacted to, she gets level 2, what else happens? Well, level 2 Ash has a special feature. Enemies with 0 power can't block. Meaning that this can't block, and this, which is getting frostbitten, also can't block. The only things that can block are these 2 spiderlings. But Ash will have 2 health, and that's okay with me. So, let's do it.
I'll lead us to victory!
My opponent declares a blocker. Because my opponent did something during the attack, I get a reaction during combat. If they didn't declare this blocker, I wouldn't have had the option. Now, as it stands, once again, my hand only has slow spells. Slow spells cannot be played during combat, nor during a spell chain, and that's okay. This happens. Bang. Bang.
That's gotta hurt.
And Ezreal, true to his word, generates a fleeting 0-cost Mystic Shot. Ezreal gets something else for leveling up. Whenever you cast a spell, deal 2 damage to the enemy nexus. So now I really, really, really like casting spells. Spell number 1 is going to be Mystic Shot. We're going to go kill the 0-2 Ravenous Butcher. Okay.
Charged.
And Ezreal deals 2 to the nexus. My opponent chose to do nothing. Okay, well, Thermogenic Beam. And we talked about Tough in the last video. Tough means it takes 1 less damage from all sources, meaning she really has 6 health. Thermogenic is going to deal 7. That seems fine. That seems fair. Let's do that too. She dies, and Ezreal hits the nexus. We end the round. On to round number 8. Alright, my opponent plays Haunted Relic, summon 3 Unleashed Spirits. It's a slow spell. I only have slow spells. We have to say okay. This spell resolved. It gave me the option to react to it, and I did nothing about it. And now, do I want to play overly defensive? My opponent only has 4 attack on the board. And you know what? That's fine. If you want to hit me, go for it.
Push back the darkness.
Ah, Now it gets tricky. My opponent has Lucian. Lucian levels up when he's seen 4 allies die. Well, these could theoretically be killed at some point, and in fact, they're ephemeral. Ephemeral units always die at the end of the round, or sooner than that if they can strike something. I don't really want to have this happen. I want to buy myself some time here. I could let him attack, but honestly, Crystal Arrow draws me a card. Let's just target it. Let's just target Lucian. Crystal Arrow frostbites an enemy and all other enemies with 3 or less health, which is everything, and it draws me a card. So sure.
Let fly.
So we frostbite Lucian. Everyone has 0 attack. And now attacking is not very useful. Ezreal hits the Nexus. That feels really good. And now Shatter is useful, right? Shatter is a combo card. It frostbites units, or if they already have 0 power, deals 4 damage. So all this Ashe frostbite stuff combos with Shatter. Shatter is going to kill Lucian. And the double check. Yes, indeed, we look at the Oracle, and indeed that spell chain will kill Lucian. So I'm on board. And Ezreal, because I cast a spell, deals 2 damage to the Nexus. My opponent attacks with all these 0 damage minions. And just in case there's some weird shenanigans, just in case, like, you don't have to do this, but, you know, maybe you want to. Just in case. Alright, well, my opponent cast Black Spear because an ally died this round. Deal 3 to an enemy unit. Now note that it doesn't matter if it's in combat or not, it's just damage to an enemy unit. Yep, that's going to happen. Okay, I'll take that damage. Nothing happens in combat. We end the round, and I'm in a very good spot right now because we're going to pass the round. The ephemeral units all die, and it's my turn. It's the beginning of round 9, and because round 9 starts, I can do whatever I want during round 9. It's an odd round. It's my turn first. I can instantly attack. If my opponent's hand has a minion or a slow unit, or has a unit or a slow spell, it's unplayable. It can't be played until I take an action, and my action is combat. So there's really nothing my opponent can do at all. And look at what the state is here. My opponent has 1 health, right? If this attack goes through, 6 plus 2 is 1 health. Keep in mind, right, Ashe is going to frostbite the strongest enemy, which is this Spiderling. Enemies with 0 power, which is what frostbite does, can't block. So if my opponent has a unit or a slow spell, they cannot in any way stop this fight from happening. That card in hand is literally unplayable. And because it's literally unplayable, and I mean, maybe it's a fast spell, maybe it's a burst spell, maybe it's something else, we don't know that. But I want to play around. I want to deny as many options as possible. Like, what if my opponent's card is a unit that heals their Nexus, or a slow spell that heals their Nexus? Let's preempt that. Let's get in that way as soon as possible. Let's, during the attack, also cast Static Shock, which deals 1 damage to 2 enemies, meaning the Nexus. Not only is that going to do 1 damage, it's also a spell, so Ezreal's going to do 2 damage to the Nexus. And the thing is, I have to do it now, because if my opponent doesn't declare a blocker or cast some kind of spell, I cannot cast Static Shock during combat otherwise. I have to front load it. I have to front load spells that I want to see played at the beginning of combat because I don't know if my opponent's going to do anything. But now, if my opponent doesn't react, I win the game. -2 health. So we attack, we cast the spell, we freeze the unit, my opponent can't block, everything gets hit, I draw the card, Ezreal deals the damage, we hit the Nexus, we win the game. We did it.